And as we bring Carson Elrod in, this actually links up really, really well because Carson is one of the co-founders of Be an Arts Hero, another organization that was founded in the nightmare hellscape of 2020 and is really as part of a big community. This is not the Carson Show, as part of a big community that is really driving a complete refresh and rethink about how do we think about cultural advocacy and the role of the federal government. Carson, thank you for joining us. It's great to see you as always.
It's a real pleasure to be here. And I have really loved listening to that conversation. And as somebody whose father lives in Estes Park, Colorado, I can affirm that Colorado people are rock and roll people.
So Carson, we're going to put some background links to kind of your broader role in life as an actor and as a connector and others just in the chat. And we're going to put in there a wonderful piece of journalism out of the Washington Post, just kind of a profile of the work that you've been doing at Be an Arts Hero. But why don't we just start, for those who have not heard of your organization, to kind of start with 10,000 feet. What is Be an Arts Hero? How did you form, and what is your main mission?
Well, just listening to Nito talk about their situation, it feels very much in alignment with ours and our experience. Ours is an organization that came together. I lost 3 jobs on March 12th, and then pretty soon the CARES Act came, and that FPUC at $600 really contemplated putting a floor underneath me and most people that I knew. And so we were just like, okay, we're going to wait this out for a couple months. And then even within that couple months, and you guys will very much appreciate this on the Nito side, I had friends who were saying, well, my agents dropped me because without commissions, they can't survive their closing. So really established talent agencies here in New York were folding, even with the CARES Act, even in those early days. And then all of a sudden, I had a friend who was a clown with the Cirque du Soleil. The Cirque du Soleil goes bankrupt. All of a sudden, he's stranded in Houston for 3 months, and then, watching the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater closed, and all of a sudden the Second City is up for sale. And it's just like, even during those first few months, you saw that without being able to be open, without being able to be full of people, without the engine of the creative economy, just functioning at full bore, it was already starting to dissolve. And then as we were getting closer and closer to the end of the CARES Act funding, on a very personal note, everybody that I knew was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do without that federal pandemic unemployment compensation. So that's when a bunch of us started to kind of like look into, okay, what did the CARES Act actually do? And we were like, okay, it looks like 11 billion kind of went into the creative economy, but there was only 75 million earmarked for the NEA. And then we started to we started to make some calls to legislators, and a very, very powerful one early on said, well, you guys are actors, and part of this, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and you guys aren't squeaking too much. And we were like, okay, point taken, heard. And so we just started in June and July to open up our phone books. And, in the beginning, we were like, okay, all we got to do is get Lin-Manuel Miranda to come out and say one thing. And if he comes out and says the arts need help, then we're going to get an $80 billion bailout. We'll be fine. So Lin, it's all on Lin. You know what I mean? And it's like, then you realize it's like, no, Lin is up to his eyeballs on 18 projects and getting Joe Biden elected and everything else. So we realized, it's like, okay, we've all been kind of pushed out the side of a building. We're all in free fall, and the options are to kind of assume the crash position or build a rocket ship as you fall. And so that's what we started to do, is we just started to call everybody that we knew. I one night in late June, just got on social media and started grabbing the Instagram handles and the Twitter handles and just started to set up a very basic infrastructure. And then within a month, we had like a core leadership team and volunteers that were starting to work with us. And we were like having town halls, and we were talking to industry leaders across disciplines. And then Matthew Lee Earlbach wrote this open letter to the 116th Senate, which was this kind of cri de coeur from the creative economy that said, hey, listen, you know, we really have an apples to apples comparison here that the 10 airlines kind of weigh in from a BEA point of view as almost an exact analog on value added to the economy, right? And it's like, okay, $50 billion of relief for 10 airlines. And then with the compromise bill, I think there was another $20 billion. Well, okay. The creative economy is 675,000 small businesses, 5.1 million Americans. This is clearly a sector at 4.5% of GDP that needs to be stabilized. We're part of the economy. We're a cornerstone of the economy. And not only that, everybody in this Zoom knows that we're anchors. You know, like when the Muni Theater in St. Louis shuts down and doesn't have a season, 4 restaurants closed permanently. You know, so our health is necessary for the overall health of the U.S. economy. We're pivotal to transportation, to tourism, to 68% of tourism is for arts and culture activities. So we really it came together in this way, and like at the beginning, as we were doing this, we were totally neophytes to all of it. But we just said, we're going to just start calling, we're going to just start lobbying. And once that letter came out and it was published in American Theater Magazine, it got over 16,000 signatures. And what was exciting about those signatures, it was everybody from, Glenn Close and Kevin Kline and Rosario Dawson to, the artistic director of the Dance Theater of Harlem, to the Billings Symphony in Montana, to the High Plains Museum in New Mexico. We got this real critical mass of kind of a cross-cultural, cross-sector constituency. We were able to finally get people up and out of their silos and into kind of a common message. And we put out this kind of flagship number of $44 billion. And we basically just said, based off of Dr. Seaman's work, is we really have this apples to apples comparison. We have basically the exact same value added to the economy of the airlines. It's a nonpartisan understanding that the entire economy needs to be stabilized. We're a huge part of the economy. We need that stabilization. So we just started I think our first call was with Tom Tillis's office, and we got that meeting because Jen Lyon is kind of a TV star. She's from North Carolina. So we got that meeting and we went in, and we had never done anything like that before, but we created a North Carolina policy brief. We went in, we talked to his office about what was going on in North Carolina, what was going on in Raleigh and Winston-Salem. And we really pitched hard. And even though we were new to it and bumping around in there and tripping all over ourselves and frankly scared, it was positive. And we started to be in dialogue with that office. And that office was a Republican office, right? So right out of the gate, we went straight to a place that we were kind of afraid to go. We were afraid we were, because of our own experience with this idea that arts and culture is partisan or something. We were afraid we were going to go in and, get laughed out of the room or told that we're not important. And when we made this socioeconomic argument, it really landed. And then that gave us confidence as we really put together a brief team. We have 10 people that create these granular city by city, state by state briefs that we go into these meetings with. And over the course of the summer, we went into over 60 Senate offices and a dozen House offices. Obviously, we're concentrated on the Senate because that's where the action needed to happen. And we just felt like we got better and better and better at it. And what started to become amazing is we were doing that work while turning up these public pressure campaigns, because we want to take advocacy out of back rooms and put it on the front page of the Washington Post. We want to take advocacy, and that's one of the things that NEVA did, right? I mean, if you can have the Foo Fighters singing songs and jumping around and smashing guitars and saying save our stages, that's going to have a little bit more impact than a call to a Senate office. It's just going to. And we have a unique opportunity in the creative economy if we get out of our silos, if we come together, if we harness our talent and our imagination and everything that we have to offer. We can be an incredibly powerful lobby on behalf of ourselves and on behalf of the sector. And we are now at a point where, the night that the compromise bill was signed, a lot of these legislative offices wrote us that night and were like, okay, Save Our Stages has crossed the finish line. What do we do next? And that's really exciting to feel like you're in that kind of dialogue, that they're not just placating you or being like, yes, it's very nice to hear from you, arts people, but the idea that we're helping them metabolize the size and scope of the problem, the catastrophe, and not just the importance of stabilizing our sector, but how we can defibrillate the United States economy on the other side of this with a growth rate of double that of the rest of the economy, with Richard Florida and Michael Siemens' work showing that wherever arts and culture is, there's going to be an economic hotspot. If you're pitching an American Rescue Plan, well, an American Rescue Plan has to have a huge cornerstone of the creative economy in it. Because if you want to defibrillate the United States economy, that's us. That's where we are. That's what we're doing. So I've been monologuing for a long time. I don't know if any of that made any sense, but that's kind of where we started and the wave that we're surfing and the direction that we're trying to head in.
Tee up Carson and watch him go. No, I love it. I love it. It's so good. And I think, just a couple observations, both in terms of your work and Nito and others. I think one is, sort of an ironic way, Zoom has sort of unlocked the ability to start these organizations in such an effective grassroots way. And we see that with our work with the Reopen Every Venue Safely initiative as well. And you wouldn't be hitting, 70 Hill offices if you had to do a traditional DC fly-in, right? And get 200 people on an airplane to go to the, Hilton to get cocktails and go walk on the Hill. So That's it's right. Interesting how Zoom has sort of unlocked the ability to have more access because, policymakers, again, Hill staff, they love to talk arts, right? The job of a Hill staffer sucks. It is a hard job. You are spending all day being told by powerful lobbyists to tell your boss to do something your boss doesn't want to do. And when you get to talk about what's happening in the arts in your community or what's happening in the broader industry, they're curious. It's not political 9 times out of 10. They want to kind of figure it out. They may have different interpretations what you do with it, but they always want the conversation. And one thing I really admire and hold up about what Being Arts Hero is doing is, it gets into the sort of non-transactional advocacy that we talk about, have the conversation, build the relationships, have the goal, right? It's amazing to have the goal of 44 billion, but you're in there to have let's kind of put the pieces together, right? Let's figure it out. I think the other thing, which is obvious, I think to people on this call, but I think we should just say it for the sake of saying it, is, with absolutely no disrespect to a lot of really hard work that's going on for a really long time in arts advocacy, something I've said, for 20 years is we can't look at a 5% increase or decrease in NEA funding as some sort of proxy for cultural policy. We need to have a bigger, broader, more complicated conversation, which again is something that you and others are kind of spurring to kind of, again, reframe this and rethink it. So Carson, let's turn a little bit towards, all right, so just like you said, SOS passed. What do you feel like is next in terms of your priorities? What are the things that you organizationally are looking for? And how do you see the coalitions kind of coming together to kind of help inform what that might be?
Well, I just want to say how much respect I have for NITO and NEVA and the Touring Professionals Alliance and Roadie Cares. And there have been, because we all got pushed out the side of the building, for those of us that are building the rocket ships as we fall, it's incredibly inspiring. And I just want to say that we're so in alignment with what Nadia said. We're not just doing all this advocacy, but we're trying to build ourselves as an official organization. So doing those two things concurrently is just an unbelievable amount of work. And I just want to say how much I respect you guys and identify and empathize with where you are, because we're there too. But it really can't be understated, the idea that an organization that didn't exist a year ago was able to craft a $15 billion legislative football and run it into the end zone within 9 months of existence. That is incredible. And it shows you the power of the creative economy. And when we get together and we use our resources and we use our talent and we use arts workers to be the face of the creative economy, to like really lift our voices literally about these things, we can really move the cultural conversation. So I think our overall objectives is to keep doing that. So just as you were talking about with like traditional advocacy approaches, the idea that it's like, okay, we're only going to talk to arts caucus members, or we're only, one of the most exciting conversations we had, we went into David Perdue's office. We didn't know if he was going to keep his seat or not keep his seat, but we were excited to go in there and just tell him and his staff about the fact that Georgia has a 7.2% growth rate in the creative economy in the arts and culture sector in Georgia. It's like the #1 growth rate of the state of Georgia. And so we think that we change the conversation by having the conversation. So we're going to have that conversation with every single office. It's going to take us time to get through all 535 members of Congress, but we're going to go to every single one of them and we're going to have this conversation, and we're going to keep the conversation going. As it pertains to like immediate objectives right now, what we are trying to do is, as I said, after the compromise bill was signed, a lot of legislative people got back in touch with us and said, okay, that was step one. What's step two? And our point of view is step two is to kind of come back to this idea of something that is on par with the relief given to the airlines, is to understand that our sector, even more than the airlines, was completely closed down. And airlines have been quasi-functional during this time. We closed down in March, and Fauci said that he thinks that live venues are probably going to be able to come back online in September, is what he's thinking. Yeah. So that's another 9 months. Yeah. That's another 9 months. So $15 billion, that's okay for now. But obviously, if we want an American rescue plan that really rescues the United States economy, there's 4.5% of it that is really precariously positioned right now. And so part of that American rescue plan has to contemplate what we're hoping would be a significant investment. Obviously, we think that NEA, NEH, IMLS, CPB should be like hyper funded with Looney Tunes anvils of money falling on them, but also more SBA oriented money for the for-profit sector and for for-profit businesses. One of our earliest partners was the Costume Industry Coalition, who makes like costumes for everything, for cruise ships, for Broadway, for opera, for everything. Well, they don't qualify for Save Our Stages. They're not enumerated as somebody who qualifies. And they're like, okay, we don't want to have to compete with Shake Shack for PPP either. We're in this position where what we need more than anything is rent relief. And if Broadway wants to come back in September and flip the lights on, well, if you want costumes on anybody, you got to put a floor under that sector. So we're like representing so many constituencies, especially the 2.7 million unemployed arts workers. So what we're going to push for more than anything is like really robust federal pandemic unemployment compensation as part of that. That's already in there, but it would be ideal to have it return to that 600, and it would be super ideal to have it retroactive to August 1st when so many people lost it. So many people right now are only in their homes because of that eviction moratorium. Right. That's the only reason why a lot of arts workers are still in their apartments. So getting retroactive FPUC is a priority, expanding it to 600 is a priority, and then contemplating more dedicated earmarked money. And then we are huge fans of Americans for the Arts Putting Creative Workers to Work proposal, which contemplates how the federal government can more actively take part in getting creatives, integrating them into all sectors of the government. And one of the things that's in there, a lot of people have been talking about it. We've been talking about it. AFTA's been talking about it. The idea of an executive level position, whether that's a Secretary of Arts and Culture, somebody on the Domestic Policy Council, but literally just having somebody with a seat at the table to speak on behalf of the creative economy and guide policy. When you think that during the Trump administration alone, there's like 20 to 30 billion dollars of agricultural subsidies, the creative economy, we're 5 times bigger than American agriculture in value added to GDP. Like we need to have a seat at the Domestic Policy Council so that we can be having these kind of conversations.
Yeah, and that's part of what is just going to be fascinating over the next month or so in the weeds in terms of structurally, again, how is the administration going to handle that? I would argue that the experience that we saw with Michael Pack and the Broadcast Board of Governors and all the mischief he made at Voice of America and other institutions are a little bit of a warning sign in terms of not giving too much institutional power to any one administration that may look to have influence on culture in ways that maybe we wouldn't want to see. But that's, again, part of what is exciting to me and a lot of other people about the experience of the Biden team, that they've been in the government, they've thought about the government, they have a pretty good understanding of the levers. And again, whether it's a position at the Domestic Policy Council or whether it's an interagency work group or whatever mechanism kind of comes out, we have a lot of confidence and hope and frankly expectation that it's going to be really, really robust. We've had some great comments in chat and we're almost at time, Carson. So we're gonna kind of have to do some closing thoughts. I do want to flag that at least one member of my board at Music Policy Forum apparently wants to jump ship and now work for your organization. So I will take that as a compliment to you. But people want to know how do they plug in? We put the relevant links in chat, but people that want to get involved in your organization, find out more. I know you're overwhelmed, so I mean, you guys don't have a ton of bandwidth, but what is the best sort of pathway for that?
Well, right now we've just launched 100 Days of Arts and Activism on our website, on our socials. Obviously the first 100 days of administration are key. So the more that we can raise our voices to the new administration, we just launched this playwright initiatives where over 275 incredible, talented American playwrights wrote an open letter to the incoming administration about their hopes and dreams for arts and culture and the creative economy. So that's great. Go to beanartshero.com. Follow us at beanartshero on Twitter, beanartshero on Instagram. Come follow us. Come get involved. Drop us a line. And the big thing that we're saying is what's represented on this call, what's represented by Nito and Neva and Be an Arts Hero is please do not wait for somebody to come save you. Don't wait. You are who's coming to save you. The only thing that Be an Arts Hero is doing is we're trying to be a convening entity where people can metabolize and understand your dignity, your value, your worth. You're part of an $877 billion in value added industry. You are so important. You are big business because you are local business in all 50 states. You have every right in any state to pick up the phone and call your senators, call your representatives, and be part of the conversation. Force yourself into the conversation. Build it into your weekly regimen. You live in Kansas, like once a week, be like, hey, Jerry Moran, what are you doing for the creative economy? I live here in Kansas. It's important to me. What are you doing? Thank you. Talk to you next week. You know what I mean? So we want to build this kind of civic engagement into what it means to be in the creative economy, because we have a lot of work to do to change the conversation. But once we have the conversation and change the conversation, there's a real opportunity here. I mean, you want to build back better, we'll do it. We'll do it. And just as Nadia was saying, it's like, just look at the inauguration. Yep. You know what I mean? We are part and parcel to the very most elemental aspects of this country, our democracy, every single part of it. We deserve a bigger seat at the table and more respect, support, and subsidy and investment.
I love it.
And certainly relief.
something we said for, again, for years is that the incremental can lead to the transformational. And part of the incremental work is just what you're saying. It's just being present, just being visible, just having those relationships, having those conversations, looking for opportunities. Carson, thank you as always for joining us. We're big fans of you and the whole team and everything you guys are building. It's fun. Makes me wish that I was your age again, but that's all right. We all get older, and then you guys have to come take
You'd be surprised. I think you'd be surprised if I told you how old I am.
Well, then you'll make me even sadder. So with that, we have to wrap today's show. Again, thank you so much to Frank, Nadia, Tom, and Carson for joining us. Thank you as always to Alex for doing a wonderful job producing the program. Thank you to all of you who participated and had great questions. Again, this program, like all of our programs, will be on our archive on musicpolicyforum.org early next week, and encourage you to share it with friends and colleagues if you think they would enjoy any of the programming today. If you have questions, comments, gently worded constructive criticism, ideas, or other feedback, always feel free to email us at musicpolicyforum@gmail.com. Thank you again. We'll see you next week with Heather Noonan from the League of American Orchestras and the incomparable Dessa. Thank you all. Have a great weekend. Be safe.